Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Abdul. Today we will see how to deploy Entra Connect or Azure AD Connect. Entra ID is the new name for Azure AD. The Entra Connect will be used for synchronizing on-premise Windows Active Directory users from on-premise server to the cloud Azure AD or the Entra ID today. We will also look into the seamless SSO process that will let the on-premise users to log into any cloud services seamlessly even without entering a password. Well, what is Microsoft Entra ID? Entra ID is the new name for Azure AD. They rebranded as Entra ID today, which is a cloud AD fully managed cloud-based identity and access management services that keeps all the user information, user credential, directory attributes, and all of that. That's basically a cloud version of Active Directory. It provides single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and conditional access policies. It also provides access control, access to different Azure resources provided using Entra ID role-based access control mechanism. Basically, it's a user database where all the enterprise users belongs to. But it is not exactly the on-premise AD, by the way. What is basically Entra Connect? Entra Connect is the tool that is used to synchronize on-premise users to cloud. Think about you have a customer having an on-premise Windows Active Directory that serves all the Kerberos-based authentication, on-premise-based authentication. All the user directory are currently managed by Windows AD. And they are in transition towards the cloud. And of course, they'll be using Entra ID or Azure AD. By the way, Entra ID is the new name for Azure AD. Microsoft recently rebranded Azure AD as Entra ID. If you have a customer with the on-premise AD and an Azure AD, and you have a requirement that you need to synchronize the on-premise users from your Windows Active Directory to the cloud Active Directory, which is Azure AD, we will be using a connector called Entra Connect or Azure AD Connect, which is again a Windows server, and it is used to sync the on-premise Windows Active Directory users to Entra ID. It's a software that is installed on an on-premise Windows server. It is not your domain controller server or AD server. It's separately a different Windows server. From Windows Server 2012 to all the way up 2022 will be supported. So you have to build a separate server, install a software called Azure AD Connect or Entra Connect, and configure a few things so that it will replicate all the on-premise users to the cloud. And keep in mind, it's one-directional replication. Any user that is getting created in on-premise AD will be replicated to the cloud. Any user that you create in the cloud, that will be pure cloud user. It will not replicate back to the on-premise. But there are two things which will be replicated back. One is called the password reset. For example, if you reset the password in the cloud, which is Azure AD, that password will be written back to the on-premise AD. That is called password write back. And also the group, Azure AD security groups, can be written back to the on-premise AD. Basically, this tool is used for synchronizing users. We don't synchronize groups. And the synchronization happens every 30 seconds by default, but you can change that. You can also trigger a manual synchronization. It also provides seamless SSO. That's one of the best feature, which I would say in this Azure AD Connect. If you have a user, which is an on-premise AD joined machine, a user is sitting on a laptop, which is already joined the domain. When he logs into the laptop, the initial authentication happens with the on-premise AD. And when he tries to log into any cloud services like Office 365 or Teams, he will not be even getting a password prompt. The login will be completely seamless. It takes the on-premise Windows AD-based Kerberos ticket and send the request back to the Entra ID and give us a seamless authentication for all the users. We will see those things today. As part of this lab, we will deploy Azure AD Connect or Entra Connect from the scratch. Then we'll also enable seamless SSO. For seamless SSO, you have to configure something called group policy. We will cover both in this video. All right, so let's go and see how to deploy Entra ID Connect. I'll talk about my lab setup. I have an on-premise data center where I have an on-premise Windows server, which is 192.168.0.11. That's the IP address. Let me log into that. 192.168.0.11. This is the Windows AD and DNS server. This is basically my domain controller. And my domain name is dir.ajcollab.com. And I have a Windows server installed. That is this guy right over here. Its IP address is 172.16.1.12. Forget about the IP ranges. I do have two networks in the lab. Those networks are routed. So basically, these two servers can reach each other. And this system is with Azure AD connector 172.16.1.12. I will be jumping between this server to that server. So to identify which server I'm currently logged in, you can check this particular label. That will let you know that, okay, I'm currently in this particular server. To install AD connector, all you need is a Windows server. I have installed a Windows server. This is a freshly installed Windows server in my VMware environment. I'm not going to the steps of Windows installation, which is very basic. You just install. This is a Windows 2019 server. I haven't configured anything. Just configure the IP address, enable the RDP so that I can do a remote desktop connection. That's it. Nothing else. First thing, I need to add this new Windows server, which is my Azure AD connector server, into the domain, which is dir.ajcollab.com. So for that, first you need to see what's the network configuration. So in my network adapter, if I go to the properties, IPv4, I can see my DNS server is 192.168.0.11, which is my domain controller or the Active Directory DNS server. This is mandatory. Once that is there, then you can go ahead and open computer properties, this PC properties, then change settings, change, click on the domain here, then type the domain name dir.ajcollab.com. Of course, you should enter the enterprise AD administrator user ID here. So it is dir administrator. Password will be this. Welcome to dir.ajcollab.com. So this machine successfully joined the Active Directory. Of course, you will have to reboot this after that. Let me restart. All right. So that's the first process. You have a Windows server, newly installed Windows server that got joined to the domain. Now we're going to go and install the Azure AD connector there. I'm logging back to the AD connector server. Of course, my wallpaper will be changed. So you don't see that label here. Let me go ahead and enable that. I have the label configured. This machine actually joined the domain. To verify that, I can go to this system properties, this PC properties, and verify that this is a domain joined system, dir.ajcollab.com. This is my full computer name. So I am fine with this. I can also verify that by going to command prompt and type set user. This tells me an information about the domain and also which username I have used, dir.administrator. I am a domain administrator. All right. So this is the first step. Make sure you have the new Windows server that joins to the domain. Next thing, you're going to go ahead and download the AD connector software. Use any of the browser of your choice. I will go with the Google Chrome and then search for Azure AD connector download. Azure AD Connect download, and this will be the version 2. Go ahead and download the software. All right, let's wait for that to complete. All right, the download got completed. Let me open the folder and start installing that. You just double click. The installation is pretty simple. It's straightforward. You need two things here. One is your enterprise administrator credential, which I have. I have the AD administrator credential. And you also need the Azure AD global administrator credential. Let me quickly show you that. If I come to my Azure portal, these are the users. I'm going to be using msadmin at ajcollab.com as the global administrator. If I go to that users, I can see that he is a global administrator. Assign role and then verify that that user is a global administrator. Okay. I can also verify that from the 365 admin portal. If I go to msadmin 2, I could also see that he's a global administrator. So this is the requirement. Let's come back to the Azure AD server. So I got a prompt. So double clicking on that setup will give you the installation prompt. Just select agree and continue. Click customize here. Do not use express settings. Go and customize. And do not select any of this. Go ahead and install. It will take some time to install the backend SQL server and few other services. Once that is completed, this will prompt you login and the configuration. All right, the initial installation is over and I am getting this prompt. There is a user sign-in option called password hash synchronization. This is nothing but synchronizing the on-premise password to the cloud Azure AD. That is needed. That is the required option. That's the recommended option. Make sure that is enabled. And you also enable single sign-on. This single sign-on is nothing but the seamless SSO login. That means any domain joined user, if they log into cloud service, which is like Teams Admin Center or Teams application or 365 portal, portal.office.com, the login will be completely seamless. So make sure this is enabled. Then go ahead and click next. And now they're asking you to connect to Azure AD. So I should enter the global administrator here, which is msadmin at ajcollab.com. All right, this will try to log into the cloud, Azure AD or Entra ID. Click on add directory and then enter the enterprise Active Directory administrator account here. If you notice here, create a new AD account. This will create an account in the on-premise Active Directory. To create that account, we need the permission from the administrator account. So that's the reason I'm entering the administrator account here. Or if you decided to have a separate user altogether, in that case, you can go and create a user, then mention that user ID and password here. But I'll go with the default one. The software will create a backend user in the on-premise AD. All right. So I added the directory. If all goes well, then you will see this tick mark here. The directory is connected. Let's go and click next. Now this will validate the domain that is added in Azure. In my Azure account, I have added ajcollab.com. This will list out the domain. I have ajcollab.com in the on-premise as well as ajcollab.com in the cloud. So that will be my primary domain, which is getting synchronized between the on-premise and the cloud. Any mismatch that find any mismatch in the domain, for example, if I create a user with dir.ajcollab.com, that will synchronize with the on Microsoft domain, the default domain with that. So make sure you have all users in on-premise with ajcollab.com, and you should have the ajcollab.com domain also added. I have already posted another video about adding the domain name, custom domain name into your Azure tenant or the 365 tenant, which is available in the description below. So let's go with the default settings. Check this box, click next. Now, this is saying domain and OU filtering. Let me just quickly go back to the on-premise AD, which is this, and go to the Active Directory of users and computer by going to Server Manager and then go to Tools, Active Directory of users and computers. Here you can see the organizational units. These yellow color folder structures are the OU organizational units. Now they are saying, and I have only one domain, dir.ajcollab.com. The connector is saying, would you like to sync all domains and the OUs inside? Yes, I do need that. I need to synchronize all domains and all OUs inside it. Let's go back to AD connector again. Now I'm in AD connector. So select sync all domain and OUs. That's fine. Click next. Here you can keep all the default settings and click next. Yes, now this is important. Filter users and devices. Again, let me switch back to the on-premise AD. If you closely look, you have a lot of users here. This default user, you see a lot of users. For example, the administrator will be a built-in user. If you go to user, you can see the administrator. I don't want to synchronize all the users from on-premise to cloud. I need to put a filter there. The filter is in the form of a Active Directory group. Anybody is a member of that group, that user will get synchronized with the Entra ID. So that's my condition. For that, I have a OU here. This is again optional. If you want to create an OU, you can. I created an OU called a service account. Here, I'm going to create a user group. So this is the shortcut key for creating a user group. Let me add that. So this is I'm doing in my on-premise AD. I'll call it as Microsoft 365 users. Okay, it's a security group. Fine. I just added a group. Currently, I have no users here. Let me create a sample user in the IT department OU. REITN. Range the scene. Make sure the domain should be ajcollab.com. Okay. Password never expires. Click next. So I created a user. Now my filter condition would be this user must be a member of my Microsoft 365 users group. So how can I add this particular user into that group? You can double click on this user, go to member of. Currently by default, this user will be a member of domain users. Add, then type the Microsoft 365 username here. Once you add, he will be a member of that. This is one way of adding a user to the group. Other than that, you can go to that particular group. This is here, Microsoft 365 users. Go there and select members. Then you can click add here. You can see ranges in is already added there because it is added from the user to the group. So adding to a group, you can do it from the user properties or from the properties of the group. So my filter condition is fine. I can add additional users here if I need extra users to be synchronized, and make sure those users will be a part of my 365 user group. Only a member of this group will get synchronized. For that, I will tell my connector, you only consider this group. Okay. It can be in any OU, doesn't matter. It can be in HR department OU or IT department OU. But the only condition is that user should be a member of 365 users group. So let me go back to the connector. So I'm at the connector. I will select synchronize selected. Okay. I don't want to synchronize all users. And then enter the group name here. And once you click resolve, this will get resolved into AD form of representation. CN equal to Microsoft 365 users, or OU equal to blah, 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 etc. So it will happen automatically. So I'm done. So this is my filter condition. Anyone who is a member of that group will get synchronized. In my example, there is a user called Ryan Jassim. He will get synchronized with the Azure AD after the configuration. So click next. So this is a few additional settings. Password hash synchronization. That means the on-premise password will get synchronized with the Azure AD password. So a user can use same password to log into the cloud services, also into the local domain. Then password write back is a new feature that will make sure if the user reset his password from the Azure AD, that password will get pushed back to the on-premise AD. So this is one of the reverse direction that happens. Usually the Azure AD Connect will be one directional from on-premise to cloud. There are two things which will come back from the cloud to the on-premise. That is, one is password, another one is called group write back. I'm not configuring group write back now. We'll go with the password write back. That is enough. Then click next. At this point, we need to enable the single sign-on. This single sign-on is not the normal single sign-on. This is like the seamless line-in process. For that, you need to provide your domain administrator again, enterprise admin again here. So enter credential, type the user account and password. All right, if all goes well, you can see a green check mark here. Go ahead and click next. So we are good at this point. Start the synchronization process when the configuration completes. Yeah, that should be fine. And the change that you're going to see after the completion will be a new user called Ryan Jassim will be get synchronized with the Azure AD. Let me quickly go back to the Azure AD. Here you can see how many users are here. Let me go to this portal, go to users, and you can currently see 8 users are there in the account. So after the sync, there'll be one more additional user coming in. And also you can enable something called the sync status. Go to the choose column and then enable the sync status. Okay, once you enable that, you can see how the user is getting created. Wherever you see the cloud symbol, those are cloud only users. And when you synchronize the on-premise, you can see an additional server symbol there that is like an on-premise. This is the way you can verify that. You can also verify from Azure AD. I'll show you that once a user get replicated here. So all our configurations are done at the connector level. Go ahead and click install. Again, it's going to take some time. Now the configurations are complete. We can click exit. And if you want to change any of the settings that you configure, you can open this guy, Azure AD Connect, and go to the respective area and reconfigure it. Currently, there is a synchronization in progress. That's the reason you are not able to see this. But once that is done, within a few seconds, that'll be over. You can relaunch that again. If you want to see the actual synchronization status, you can go to synchronization service. Go there. That will open up the actual synchronizer and you can see the status here. So it's like a full import from the directory and full import from the cloud. Then full synchronization, they will evaluate, okay, what are the new user get created. And then finally that will upload to the cloud AD, which is that full export. And if you go to that full export adds, there is one new column added and go there, click properties. You can see this is that particular user, Rain Jassim. This is the new user got added. Now, if I go back to my Azure AD, I can see a new user here. Currently, there are 8 users. If I refresh, I will be able to see the new user got created. I can see one more additional user here. This on-premise directory synchronization user is a default user that created to perform this particular action. Don't modify anything on that. The other account range is seen that is got created. If I go to 365 portal and refresh here, I could see the same thing here. Range Jassim got created. I do see the other synchronization account. Let it be there. That is for performing synchronization actions. So Range Jassim, if you look at here, you can see the sync status is the on-premise. This is the way you can quickly identify this user got replicated from on-premise. If I am in the Azure AD portal, go to that particular user, then check its properties, then go to properties. And here you will see on-premise sync enabled. Yes. And on-premise distinguished name. This is the Rain Jassim is a part of IT department and DC will be dir.ajcollab.com. So this way you can identify this user got synchronized from on-premise AD to the cloud. So that's the complete configuration of Azure AD Sync or Entra ID Connect. There are some PowerShell command that will be useful. So let me go to the PowerShell and bring up few commands. Get AD sync scheduler. This will tell you the status of current schedule. By default, every 30 minutes, there will be an execution. There will be a sync running. So this is that 30-minute time and what time next sync happens. So that is that. If you want to disable the entire synchronization, you can enter this command. After the disable, if you want to enable, then you can set this to true. Okay, this way you can disable and enable. I don't want to do that now. That is still fine. And say, for example, you added a new user and you need an immediate synchronization without even waiting for 30 minutes, because 30 minutes is the default one. So any user that you add into the Azure AD will take 30 minutes to replicate in the cloud. That's the synchronization time. Like, for example, if you added 10 users, in the next sync, all the 10 users will be there in the cloud, but that sync will happen every 30 seconds. So if you wanted to have a manual sync, you can perform this command, start AD sync cycle, policy type delta. Delta means only the changes will be pushed towards the cloud. Let me try that now. For that, I'll add another user in the on-premise AD. Let me go back to the AD server, which is this. And in the HR department, I will add a new user, user 01, user.01.ajcollab.com. All right, so I added the user. Now, again, if I perform this synchronization, this will not be synchronized because this user is not a member of the group. Let me go back to the group and add him as a member here. So let me add user 01 here. Yes, he got added to the group. So there are two users in the Microsoft 365 users group. Those two users will be synchronized after, means one user got added recently, that will be get synchronized in after 30 seconds. So I don't have time to wait for 30 seconds. I need to do a immediate sync. For that, I can run this command. So before running this command, I will clean the history here. Go to action, clear runs, and uncheck this box and hit OK. This will clean up the entire screen. And then I'll perform this PowerShell command. Let's see what happens. I enter this. Result is successful. Now you can see some automatic synchronization got triggered here. Come on. Yeah, it's in progress. Wait for the entire directory to get synchronized. The process will be, it will fetch the details from the on-premise. It will fetch the details from Azure AD and then evaluate. If there is any delta, a new change happens, this will push that changes into the cloud. It's only one direction up. So if I look at this one, the export is in progress. Yeah, I can see a new ad. Okay. So this is ajdevelop.onmicrosoft.com. That is my Azure AD. I can see a new ad. Go there, select this, click properties, and I can see it's a user one. But this time, if I go to my Azure AD, I'll be able to see that new user one got created. Let me refresh. I can see that user one got created here. So this way you can perform a manual sync. Otherwise, you need to wait for 30 minutes to get that synchronization. Yeah, that's all about AD connector installation and configuration. Now, any user that you create in the on-premise and add that user to the group, he will get synchronized right after 30 minutes. Now, there is a feature called seamless single sign-on. For that to demonstrate, I will have a client machine here. This is a Windows 11 computer. Just reformatted it. So I'm going to configure a few things, laptop build process. All right, so let me quickly click next and then finish the initial laptop provisioning. Imagine this is a new laptop that you received, and when you power on, you will see this kind of interface. Here, during the initial setup process, you need to add the system into the domain, which is dir.ajcollab.com. Then log into the system as a user. User PC, it's the PC name, that's okay. Click next. At this screen, you need to select it for setup for work or school. Click next. And then they will ask you to log into the Azure AD directly. If you have an Azure AD user, you can log in here. That is called cloud joined device. I don't want this to be a cloud joined device. I need the system to be an on-premise domain joined system. The cloud joined domain I will show you separately, but currently I'm setting up it for an on-premise setup. Or you can go to sign in options and then select this domain join instead. Who is going to use this device? I'll just say user. I can skip the password. Click accept. Now the initial laptop provisioning is over. Now the laptop build has been completed. This is the client laptop. And I need to add this client laptop into the domain. So how do I add that? Go to this PC properties. And I could see that this is currently in work group. Where is the domain, information domain or work group? This is not currently added to any of the domain. Let me go ahead and click domain or workgroup and then click change. Then I can add this into my dir.ajclub.com. Before doing that, make sure your DNS server is set to that domain controller's IP address. So we go to run network editor. This is my network adapter. Go to IPv4. The DNS server should be 192.168.0.11. That's my DNS. You can set the alternate DNS as 8.8.8.8. I will also uncheck the IPv6. Again, that is optional. So I set the DNS server into the domain controller. That means now this particular client laptop, assume this is just a laptop, it can now talk to the domain controller. So go ahead and click change, then click domain, type dir.ajcollab.com. Now this will prompt you for the enterprise administrator account. So provide that administrator credential. Now this particular system will be a member of the domain. Welcome to the domain. Done. Okay. And I need a restart. Start now. Once you add the system into any domain, any user inside the domain can be able to log into this particular system. It's like how the corporate laptops or corporate desktops are built. So anyone in the on-premise AD can log into this particular laptop now. If, for example, we have the train just theme user configured, that user can log in here now. So let's do that. Select other user. Okay. Then type REIGN dot scene. So this will log into the PC as a normal user. So I can use my domain account, domain user account to log into this laptop. And now what is seamless single sign-on? Any user who logged in like this by adding a computer into domain and then logging into the domain with the corporate account, when they access portal.office.com or Outlook or Teams application, the login will be completely seamless. Currently, it is not configured. Let me show you that. If I try to access portal.office.com, I need to enter the user ID. Of course, that is always needed. I'm also entering the password. Currently, I need to do that. It's a authentication mechanism. I need to enter the user ID and password. But once I enable the seamless single sign-on, I can bypass this section. The moment I enter the user ID, password entering will be completely seamless. What happens in the backend is it recognizes, okay, it's a domain joined user, it's a domain user, and it initially sends a request to the Azure AD, and Azure AD sees that, okay, it's a synchronized user. Let me request a Kerberos ticket from the on-premise AD. So a request will be coming back, and it authenticates with on-premise server. The on-premise I have already authenticated because I logged into the system with the same domain credential. So with that setup, the process will be seamless. Currently, it is not seamless. I do see the password option here. Let me go ahead and do the seamless process. Then I'll also log out from here. Log in back again after some time. So I logged out. Let's go back to my AD server. This is my AD server. What is the server manager? Tools, group policy management. So I need to create a group policy to push specific settings to all client computers. So that will enable that seamless single sign-on. So expand your forest domain and then primary domain, go to the default domain policy, then right click and edit. Go to policies, administrative templates, Windows components. We maximize this. Then Internet Explorer, Internet Control Panel. Here you need to look for site to zone assignment list. Double click on this one, select enabled, and then go ahead and paste the value here, which is https://autologin.microsoft-azure-ad-sso.com. I will also add the same URL in the description box below. Value will be 1. This is needed. Click apply. Okay. This is one settings. Then you expand the security page and go to intranet zone and look for the settings called allow updates status bar via script. So enable this settings. So make sure that is enabled. For me, it is enabled. So if it is disabled, make sure that is enabled. Click OK. And you need to add one more thing in the group policy. Minimize the policies, go to preferences, Windows settings, registry, right click here, new registry item. And here, the key path will be this. Again, by the way, I will also add this one in the description below. The value name will be HTTPS. Value type will be reg dword. Value data will be this. Where is my notepad? This will be the value data. I will add this information below. Apply. Okay. So these are the three things you need, three group policy items. Once that is done, you can close this group policy editor window and come back to the client computer, which is here. This is the client. Log in back again. Okay, so this user now got the group policies from the domain controller server. And let me try to log into portal.office.com now. Let's see that seamless process. Portal.office.com. So it's asking me to enter the initial user ID, which is Rain. Now, if I click next, the entering of the password will be seamless. Let's see that now. All right, it logged in. It did not ask me to enter the password again. So this is called seamless single sign-on with Azure AD Connector. Okay, I can finish those settings. If the user is assigned with the proper licenses, for example, Teams licenses or Exchange Online licenses, I can access those applications from here. Currently, this is not assigned, but let me go ahead and assign one license to the user. So go to the 365 admin portal, select Train Jassim, and let us assign the E5 license to him and see what will be the changes. Go to license tabs. Let the country would be US itself, and then enable the license. So now this user is a licensed user. He will have access to Teams, Exchange Online, many other Office applications. We'll go back to the client computer, open the Edge browser, go to teams.microsoft.com. Teams.microsoft.com. Here also the login will be seamless. Since I have already logged in before, it will also take the credentials. Since I have already logged in before with the portal.azure.com, it has taken the same user ID, and the entire login process will be seamless. So if this particular user is accessing any other cloud services, the login process will be completely seamless. This is called Azure AD Connector based or Entra Connect based seamless single sign-on. That's it for today. One more thing, if you wanted to see the health of those AD connector, you can go to 365 portal, health, and then directory sync status. You can see directory sync is on. Last sync was 12 minutes ago. Password sync is on. And then go to Azure AD. Here also you have Entra Connect status. So Microsoft Entra Connect, Connect Sync. And this will also tell you single sign-on enabled, seamless single sign-on enabled. All right. So this is the way you can verify the single sign-on process. So that's it for today. So let me quickly summarize what we have done so far. Initially, we had an on-premise Windows Server and Entra ID. Those two are independent. You have all users in on-premise, you have some other users in Entra ID or Azure AD. So we decided to integrate these two things with Entra Connect or Azure AD Connect. And we built a Windows Server. We installed Azure AD Connector v2 on that. We configured the Azure AD Connector in such a way that it will take the users from the on-premise and replicate that to the cloud. During the process, we enabled password hash synchronization. That means the on-premise password will be the cloud password. And then second thing we enabled was seamless single sign-on. That means a corporate user, a domain joined system user logs into the cloud services. The password authentication will be completely seamless. This is what we have done so far. To enable that seamless single sign-on the on-premise AD, we configured a group policy so that the user experience will be completely seamless. That's it for today. If you feel like this video helping you, consider subscribing my channel. My name is Abdul, signing off. See you in another video. Bye-bye.